Begin with a story. The year was 1874. The date was September 24th. Colonel Reynold S. Mackenzie, a seasoned veteran of the Civil War in the United States and of the Indian Wars of the U.S. Cavalry, was scouring the lands of West Texas and North Texas, trying to discover roving bands of Comanche Indians. Now, these Indians were skilled at striking an enemy village quickly, and then when they retreated, they departed in all different directions so that their adversaries could not tell which ones to follow. They then returned to their very well-hidden villages in river valleys. Those villages moved every 3 or 4 weeks, so it was almost impossible to find them. Mackenzie and his men were very frustrated. They'd been searching for over a month without success. It was an unusual fall in this usually very dry land in that they were experiencing torrential rains. They didn't have roads and highways in those days, so their supply wagons with their food and their supplies were bogged down in knee-deep mud 5 miles behind. They had traveled well on to 20 miles that day. The cavalry liked to ride, but they had to travel on foot, lest their horses also be bogged down in the mud beneath the weight of the soldiers. About 4 o'clock that afternoon, they were greeted by their Tonkawa Indian scouts, allies, with the news they had long been awaiting, for they had discovered in a canyon in northwest Texas a large band of Indians. Colonel Mackenzie waited until nightfall, then under the cover of darkness, hoping not to be discovered, he marched his men 25 miles in just 12 hours. A pretty aggressive march. Until in the pre-dawn hours the following days, they peered over the edge of the Palo Duro Canyon. How many of you have been there? The Palo Duro Canyon near present-day Amarillo. They beheld a sight much greater than they had even hoped for. For there below them, in 5 distinct camps, they saw between 1,000 and 2,000 Indians, between 1,000 and 2,000 horses. And the cavalry had not been detected. Their Tonkawa scouts found for them a path leading precipitously 900 feet down to the canyon floor. In the quietness of the dark, they descended that path, and at daybreak, when they landed on the floor of the canyon, the battle began. The Indians at first took a defensive posture, for they had been taken by surprise. They had their wives and their children with them. There was sort of a running fight that ensued for about 4 miles, after which Colonel Mackenzie gave the command for a full charge. The Comanches at this point realized that it was wiser for them to retreat out of the canyon with whatever people, supplies they could muster, than to achieve a military victory. Mackenzie did not follow them out. For you see, he had achieved his great objective as he captured 1,400 horses. He led his men and his horses out of the canyon to their camp. He gave away 400 of the best horses to his Tonkawa friends and scouts. And then in a macabre, grisly action, he slaughtered more than 1,000 horses, killed them, leaving their bodies to stink and rot on that North Texas prairie. Young people, why do you think Colonel Mackenzie did that? Why such a maneuver? Why did he kill all those horses? Any ideas? Any thoughts?
They had enough horses and they didn't want the enemy to get their hands back on the horses, so they just killed them off.
Yes. What did those horses mean to the Indians?
It meant that they had food and nourishment and that they were able to survive.
Yes! It was the fall. Winter was coming. They had previously lived off buffalo, but the buffalo were gone. They were going to eat those horses. But there was another reason. Oh, it's okay.
To be able to travel.
That would be one. But the horses, in addition to being food, were money. They were bartering chips for the Indians. That's what they traded with other peoples and tribes, even with the Spaniards in Mexico, for the things they needed. So without those horses, they lacked the means to survive, and they had no choice but to surrender to the cavalry. I and my men formed the last remaining band of Comanches in Texas. All the other tribes had been subdued. We were camped 70 miles to the south near present-day Lubbock, and for the next 7 months we played a cat-and-mouse game with the cavalry until I finally realized that the days of Comanche living freely on the plains of Texas, plains of America, had come to an end. My name is Quanah Parker. Now, as my name might imply, I'm a man who's lived in two different worlds. I was born in the world of what many people would call the Stone Age. What is the Stone Age? What is the meaning of this term, the Stone Age? Anybody?
Kind of primitive.
Seemingly primitive, but they were not primitive people. It was an age before men learned to get metal out of ores and refine it and make tools out of metal, copper, bronze, steel. So they made their tools and their weapons out of stone and bone, wood, things like that. They got their power from wood fires. They communicated long distance. How did they communicate long distance? Smoke signals. Other means too. They used birds. They had ways of getting things done. So that was the way of the Indians. My father's name was Nocona. There's a town in Texas named after him. There's a town called Quanah. If you have an expensive pair of boots or baseball glove, chances are the brand name is Nocona. My mother was born Cynthia Ann Parker, the daughter of a Texas pioneer family who was captured in one of the early wars between the Texans and the Comanches, and I will tell you more of that later in our time together. Now, when you think of the term, the Indians, the Native Americans, quite often you think, well, they were a unified and monolithic people. They're all the same, right? No. Nothing could be further from the truth. In Texas alone, there were more than 12 major Indian tribes. Under each of these 12 were many sub-tribes and small tribal groups. Sometimes they lived in peace. Sometimes they fought. Sometimes tribes formed alliances against another tribe or against the white man. They had different places of origin, spoke different languages, most often couldn't even understand each other. They dressed differently, their religion was different in every way. I was of the Comanche tribe. The Comanches and our mortal enemies, the Apaches, were known as the Indians of the plains. We lived off of the buffalo. How did we live off the buffalo? What was it? In what way did we live off of the buffalo?
You hunted and ate them?
We ate them.
Clothing and
Clothing, yes. How about their hides? Our homes, our mobile homes, if you will, were made from the hides of buffalo, and the tools that we used, the weapons, these things were made from parts of the buffalo. When they descended upon the grassland, we moved with them. When they moved again, we moved with them. The Comanches and the Apaches and many other tribes of the West, but these were the two Indians of the plains of Texas. Now, the Comanches were once one of the weaker tribes in the northern lands of America. We were sort of like the 98-pound weaklings having sand kicked in our face by the stronger tribes. That is, until we acquired a technology which transformed us from the weakest of tribes to the most powerful tribe ever to grace the plains of America. What was the technology that did that? Anybody?
Domesticating horses.
That is correct. The horse. Now, we were not the first to acquire the horse. But unlike the earlier tribes, we used the horse as more than just a beast of burden or a means of transportation. To the Comanche, a horse became a fighting machine. The Comanche boy learned to ride at age 3, had his own horse, trained for all of his young years. By the time he became a brave, about 10 years later, he could ride not just on top of a horse, he could ride hanging from the side of a horse. He could deliver 12 arrows in the time it took a soldier to load, shoot, and reload his rifle just one time. That is what gave us military superiority over the white man until the white man acquired a piece of technology. What was that? What gave the white man parity with the Indian in battle?
the automatic rifle.
Yes. Actually, it was the 5-shooter. You've heard of the 6-shooter. Before the 6-shooter was the 5-shooter. Allowed them to fire without having to reload. So we were the Indians of the plains. Let me tell you of some of the other tribes. In the southern part of Texas were the Indians of the coastal plains. The Indians along the coast. What was the best known tribe? The Karankawa. The Karankawa. The tall, strong people. They lived along the coastline. They traveled in swift dugout canoes. They fished. They ate agricultural products of the sea. They were sophisticated. They made pottery, baskets. Their bows were 6 feet high. They could hit a target accurately, longer than a football field, at more than 100 yards. To the west of them were tribes known as the Coahuiltecans. Now, there was no Coahuiltecan tribe, per se. There were dozens of small tribes that shared the Coahuiltecan language. The Coahuiltecans were nomads. They were hunters and gatherers. When I use the term hunters and gatherers, what am I talking about? What did nomads, how did they survive? What did they do?
traveled around following like buffalo herds, etc.?
Yes, now they were not quite as far north as the buffalo herds. So they lived off of deer, foxes, small game. They dug up roots, nuts, berries. They lived on whatever they found on the land, and then when they depleted a piece of land, they moved on. This means they had some battles with other Comanches. Why did they have conflict among the Comanches tribes?
They all needed the same thing.
That's right, they had two tribes descended on a nice green river valley. Who was going to take it? Either they made peace, shared it, or they fought. In the eastern part of Texas were the Indians of the forest. When you think of the Indians of the forest, what tribes or tribe do you think of? Anybody? The best known were the Caddos. You can go to see a Caddo village. Have any of you been to East Texas and seen the Caddo villages there? Yes, they had large towns. They had large round domed houses. They had schools. They had an organized religion. They were farmers. They farmed the land, growing the things you and I like to eat today: corn, beans, squash. They had fruit orchards. They were traders. They traded with the other Indian tribes and with the white man, especially with the French. Then in the western part of Texas were the Indians of the desert. But Indians of the desert tribe, what tribes do you know of that would be called the Indians of the desert? Anybody? Humanos, yes, and the Pueblos. They lived along the great river valleys, like the Rio Grande or the Pecos. They had large adobe houses. Looked like a modern-day apartment complex, sometimes 3 or 4 stories high. Have any of you been to New Mexico and seen the Pueblo homes? Yes, several of you have. Very similar. That's how they lived. They had large towns, up to 10,000 people. They raised grains, wheat, corn. They slaughtered buffalo. The buffalo were that far north, so they had buffalo. That's how they existed. Then down from the central part into the central part of Texas came the Indians of the grasslands, the Indians of the prairies, the Wichitas, the Wacos, the Tawakanese, many other tribes, including that mysterious tribe called themselves the people of the wolf, Tonkawa. They were like the Indians of the plains in that they hunted buffalo. They were like the Indians of the forest in that they farmed. Hunters in the winter, farmers in the spring. Then into the eastern part of Texas in the 1800s came the displaced tribes from the eastern United States, such as the Cherokee, one of the 5 civilized tribes they were known as. Sam Houston lived among the Cherokee for 5 years of his life. Did you know that he was an adopted member of the Cherokee tribe? Now, in order to understand the Native American peoples, you must understand something of their worldview. Young people, what is a worldview? What does that term mean?
It's how you see the world, like a perspective.
Yes, the perspective of the world. Any other ideas? Worldview. Everyone has a worldview.
It's how you see society.
Okay, how you see people, the relation. Now the Indian peoples, like everyone else, like you and me, they behold the world, the universe around them, and they ask questions. But the same questions that you ask. Where did all of this come from? Where did I come from? Are we alone? Are there forces, powers, greater than ourselves and there are? Can we know them, communicate with them? The answers to these questions are your worldview. You have one, even though you don't realize it. Now Indians looked around, they saw powers and forces greater than themselves. What were some of the powers and forces that they might have seen?
Wind.
The wind, sun,
Constellation.
the great stars of the sky, the earth itself. They saw the creatures of the earth, and they noted that all of these things had power, the sun to warm the earth, the wind, the rain. Even the creatures of the earth had great powers. They viewed these things as having spirits, regarded them as gods. Some had worshipped one spirit, a great spirit, some many spirits. But they regarded these things as God. They wanted to commune with them. What did they do? They did the same thing that people today do. How did they try to commune with these spirits?
Through religion.
Religion, yes. Ritual. They chanted. They danced. They tried to commune through vision and dream. What did they want from these spirits or gods? They wanted the same things that we want. What did they want from them?
Prosperity.
Prosperity, yes. Life itself, they got sick. They wanted healing. Something else big that they wanted. Let me give you a clue. When your football team is assembled, huddled in their locker room, they might utter a prayer. What do they sort of want? What are they hoping for?
Good luck.
Yes.
Protection.
Protection.
Victory?
Victory! Yes, the Indians wanted victory over their enemy. Many people say that we were cruel and brutal. But I say to you that life itself is cruel and brutal. For example, we never knew for sure when we woke up in the morning whether we might find ourselves surrounded by an enemy who would sweep down on us, kill us, pillage us, enslave our wives and children. So we had to be ready to fight at all times. We could not make peace. We had to be ready to fight. We were not separated from our enemies by great oceans. They were right across the river, right across the river. When we fought, we had to fight to the death. Either they conquered us, or we conquered them. The white man came. The white man also was cruel. Indians were cruel. The white man was cruel. I suppose those white preachers who came and told us that all men have an evil nature, I suppose they were right. For you see, when any people must do so, they will do whatever is necessary to survive and then to predominate over their enemies. Now with the white man, we had many struggles and battles. I will tell you of 3 of them. First, in the year 1836. Now what happened in Texas in 1836? Big year in Texas history. Anybody? The Battle of the Alamo. The Battle of San Jacinto. The Battle of Goliad.
The Texas Revolution.
The Texas Revolution. That sums it up. And after that, what happened in Texas? 1836. Texas became a republic, an independent nation, own government. And with that, families began to move out onto the open prairies. Families like the Parker family. My mother, Cynthia Ann Parker, is part of this great family. There's a county named after the Parker family today. When they moved out onto the prairie, It was an encroachment, not only on our land, but on our very way of life. So what were we to do? Had you been in our shoes, what would you have done? Here comes the white man encroaching on our land. What would you have done?
I would have attacked them.
Yes, fight.
Warn them, and then if they didn't leave, then attack them.
I'm sorry.
So you warn them to get off your territory, and then you attack them if they still
Yes,
leave.
yes, say, this is our land. Did we sit there and say, come and take us, take our land? No, we fought them. When we fought, we took captives. Why would we take captives? Why wouldn't we just kill them? Why would we take captives?
He's using them like bargaining.
Bargaining chips, that's right. The second battle, 1840, San Antonio, the council house fight. We were meeting with the Texans to exchange bargaining chips, captives, for land. A struggle broke out. They killed 12 of our chiefs, 20 others of our people. We left them, ceased to trust the white man. For the next 30 years, had many battles on the lands of Texas. 1870, the Red River Wars. The Red River Wars. Let me set the stage. What happened in America between 1860 and 1865?
Civil War.
The Civil War, the war between the states. When the Civil War was over, the Industrial Revolution began in the North. Factories, great companies, and great industry. They used the tough hides of the buffalo to make machinery belts, to drive the factories of the East. Buffalo hides were in great demand, and so the buffalo hunters came. They hunted and killed the buffalo by the millions, almost to extinction. And with them came the U.S. cavalry, who knew that the buffalo was the lifeblood of our existence. When they killed the buffalo, they destroyed our way of life. That is when the Battle of Palo Duro Canyon, which I described to you at the beginning of our time together, took place. It was after that, as I said earlier, that I finally decided that the days of the Comanche living freely on the plains had come to an end. And I decided then to exchange my war bonnet for a business suit. I moved my people by negotiation to the Indian Territory. I became a leader of my people, leading them into the ways of the white man, raising cattle instead of hunting buffalo, farming, raising crops, the trades, the schools, and the work. I negotiated on behalf of my people. I made more than 20 trips to Washington, D.C., where I had friends in high places. I marched in the inaugural parade of President Theodore Roosevelt. President Roosevelt came to my land in the Indian Territory. He dined with me. He hunted with me. Those who had formerly been my enemies, the great ranchers of West Texas, now became my friends, my business partners. I invested with them in cattle and land and railroads. I became what many people said was the wealthiest Native American in America. But there were some things I refused to give up. religion, our culture, the wearing of these rings, our appearance. I also refused to give up the practice of having many wives. I had 8 wives at one time. The white man made me give up my position as judge of the Indian court because I would not give up this practice. But they were not the only ones who did not like the idea of my having 8 wives. Many of my wives didn't like it either, and they left me. I suppose they thought I was giving preference to one wife over another wife, or preference to the children of one wife over the children of another wife. Who knows? Hard enough to live with one woman. Think of how it would be having to please 8 of them. What is the lesson to be learned from my life? The lesson is this: the world changes, the times change, life changes. You must change with it. This was true for me. It will be true for you and for your children as well. So now I leave you with the blessing of the Comanche people. Yo, Anokopo, Namisutai. Bless us all. And with the words of the Cherokee, Wendeaho, Wendeaho. For all we know, the people of the Great Spirit. And people, thank you.